To pull oneself up by their bootstraps. This is a very common turn of phrase in the world today, often referring to the ideas of succeeding only by one's own efforts or abilities, or to recover from a setback without any outside help. It is used to suggest that people who are down and out shouldn't need the support of those around them to cope or survive. For example, people who are poor and the greater population should not have to pay taxes to support them. Or when somebody has been successful in their career and moved to the top of the corporate ladder, they have bootstrapped themselves. It is also a common term for the more current gig economy, or the concept that individuals are independent contract or online workers due to the fact that one income is not sufficient enough to support themselves. But where did this term come from? And is our understanding of it accurate? The term is actually very old. It's attributed to a set of fictional stories written in 1780, The Surprising Adventures of Baron Munchausen, in which the main character attempts to claim that he pulled himself out of a swamp by grabbing his bootstraps and yanking. At the time of the story, it was presumed that Baron Munchausen was claiming a ludicrously far-fetched and even impossible task. Interestingly enough, this name Munchausen is also where the term Munchausen Syndrome comes from, or more appropriately named fictitious disorder, in which a patient feigns illness, either due to emotional or mental illnesses. So how did we get from the idea that pulling oneself up by the bootstraps was a ludicrous idea and even suggesting the possibility that the individual was lying about their situation, to a concept of enterprise, recovery, and individual success? Somewhere along the way, we shifted from a sense of collaboration and connection, evident by the ridiculousness of going it alone and pulling themselves out of a swamp by their bootstraps, to a community of individualism, self-sufficiency, and, dare I say, isolation. On Friday night, there was a group of us here in the sanctuary that watched the video of my ordination ceremony from last October. At the beginning of the service, there was a land acknowledgement from 2 Indigenous women that I worked with from 2013 to 16. Kate offered a welcome to the land where we were. She told those that had gathered in Calgary about the people who lived there before settlers came, talking about the Piikani, Kainai, Siksika, and Dene peoples. One thing that she said that was so profound to me was this: you need lots and lots of people to live and survive in this traditional territory. There is not a lot of wood here, and you need to travel very far to get your resources. For those of you who have been to Alberta and Saskatchewan, you will know that there is not a lot of wood there. This was something that I knew, and yet this was a new way of knowing for me. A recognition that Indigenous peoples in other territories might live in small family groupings, but in the prairies, large groups of people stayed together in order to help one another survive. Similar to this, I remember a story that my grandfather told me about growing up in southern Manitoba in the 40s and 50s. He was a farm boy. My great-grandfather farmed grain, and my great-grandmother kept a vegetable garden. Or I suppose nowadays we would probably consider what she kept a small farm, seeing as how she had enough vegetable plots to feed a family of 8 kids and 2 parents all of the vegetables that they would eat for the entire year. And they also kept animals, chickens mostly for their eggs, and cows, both for milk and for meat. My grandpa told me that they belonged to a cattle share with the neighboring farms. meaning that each month one of the farms would donate a cow to be killed and butchered so that all 6 of the families would be able to eat meat for the next 2 months. And then the next family would do the same. In this way, each family would only have to share 1 animal, but would be fed for the whole year round. There was recognition not only in my grandfather's time and in the time before Europeans made it to Turtle Island, what is now called North America, that supporting one another was the only way we were able to survive, let alone just be resilient. But to actually survive the cruelties of this land and the necessities of being human. Somewhere along the way, we were separated from this idea of communities offering more substantial support to its members. I have talked here before about my idea of the divine, my idea of the sacred, or even God, and that is our relationships. The connections that hold one to another, knitting us together in the fabric of this world. This, for me, is the divine that needs to be witnessed and worshiped. And this idea is expressed and perhaps more wholesomely described by a philosopher and theologian, Dr. Henry Nelson Wyman. In his book, Man's Ultimate Commitment, Henry Nelson Wyman suggests that we need in our lives to achieve the infinite potentialities present in us at our birth. He stresses the importance of our commitments to a lifelong process that enables us to live our lives to the fullest. In order to obtain the greatest human good, one has to commit to live creative interchange from within. This special human interchange that Henry Nelson Wyman coined creative interchange is our ability to learn what others have learned, to appreciate what others appreciate, to feel what others feel, imagine what others imagine, and to creatively integrate all of this within what we have already acquired and formed in our own true individuality. Described a different way, creative interchange is experience. The kind of experience that transforms us in ways in which we cannot truly transform ourselves. As we meet in shared experience, we become more fully human in ways in which we can never predict or bring about by striving to do so. If we attempt to extrapolate this idea of creative interchange, a practice of becoming more fully human, in ways that we could not have done so by ourselves alone, and combined it with this notion of cooperation, collaboration, and connection to the people surrounding us, then it would seem that we need one another more than ever for our resiliency. We need to rely on one another. Our need to rely on one another is not only tied up with our survival on the harsh prairie lands hundreds of years ago, before modern technology and infrastructures were developed, nor is it tied up in the farming life of the first half of the 20th century, but it is also wrapped up in our spiritual resilience. And integration of our experiences with others is the only way in which we are going to become more fully human. For me, a faith community, a Unitarian Universalist church, encompasses many of these needs for human life. It gives us the space to question, struggle, and perhaps come to an understanding of theological questions. Or perhaps we should just call them the big questions in life. A faith community should allow us a space to care for and be cared for, not only in our moments of sorrow, pain, struggle, and strife, but also in the moments of joy, celebration, achievement, and peace. Being part of a community that cares means that you are witnessed as you go through the roller coaster of life. It also means that there is a community of people who we can discern about our commitments with, discovering what ethical, spiritual, financial, and relational commitments are appropriate for us. We are able to discover what issues in the world are worthy of our energy, working for justice, perhaps fighting for justice, realizing injustice, and learning about other people's opinions of justice is all made easier when a community struggles with the big questions and have cared for one another and discovered what each other's commitments are. When I dream of belonging to a community, this is what I think of: a place where I can seek and share my views, to struggle and discern with what I believe is right, good, real, wrong, necessary, or possible. There are people who will care for me, and I for them. We will celebrate one another and offer solace when it is needed. I will look to those in my community to help me discover what to commit for and to figure out where my resources or my energy, time, finances, and talents should be put. And I will discover who and what I care about in the greater community and in our world. I do not look to be guided through my community life, but I want to be encouraged to ask, ponder, and choose my path. And I hope that a community, a faith community, would help me be responsible to those decisions. Perhaps we cannot know personal resilience until we belong to a community that helps us to find our strengths, determine what our resources are, discover what we believe, and to figure out our path. Maybe it is, as Jill Sudi suggests, that we cannot know personal resilience until we have a social support around us, be that the personal relationships that we have with one another, or the social safety nets that support us, like healthcare and parental leave. I think it is foolish to believe that we can get through life all by ourselves, pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. It seems as ridiculous as being able to pull myself out of a swamp. We all require the support of the people to make it through our lives, whether it is the farmers who grow our food, the bus or taxi drivers getting you to your next destination, or the people you invite round your dinner table for a celebratory meal. We need one another to survive. We need one another to thrive. We need one another to help achieve a resilient spiritual life. Of course, we are always going to have naysayers, just like the robins in our story this morning. There are always going to be people who tell you that you are not capable or that there is no point in trying. Or sometimes when you reach out to those who we are in connection to, we feel a sense of shame, a neediness, an inner struggle with our own worthiness. But maybe that's how we got into this mess. What would it look like if we allowed ourselves to keep coming back and asking for advice? If we were able to listen to the people in the world who acted more like Frog, with encouragement, suggestions on shifting, or adding more creative ideas, perhaps we can learn to fly.